Hi, welcome to our newest video blog called One Month of Torah in 5 Minutes. So today, the idea is just for our 6th graders and their parents to get to know each of the Torah portions and as a way of preparing for your bar and bat mitzvah. So today we're going to be talking about 5 different Torah portions starting from last week's Torah portion. So the first one is called Toldot. And this Torah portion talks about Isaac and Rebekah wanting to have children. And they didn't have children at first, and then Rebekah asked God, why am I not having children? What was I put on this earth for if I wasn't to have children? And so God said, okay, fine, you'll have 2 children. So she ended up having Jacob and Esau together. They were twins in her womb, and from the first day they were fighting. And so they would struggle their whole lives, and God told her that the younger would win out over the older, and that the stronger one would serve the weaker one. So we know that the weaker one is Jacob, and the stronger one is Esau. So twice in this Torah portion does Jacob, the younger, trick the older Esau. The first time was when Esau was very, very hungry after coming back from hunting out in the field, and instead of Jacob just offering to him some soup that he had made, he said, sell me your birthright and I'll give you some soup. So Esau didn't have any choice but to say, okay, fine, you can have my birthright. The second time was at the end of the Torah portion when Jacob dressed like Esau in order to get his father Isaac's final blessing. And Isaac was blind at this point, so it was not too hard to trick him. But in the end, Jacob got the blessing and Esau was left with a secondary blessing that wasn't as good. So the blessing was that Jacob's descendants would cover all over the earth, north, west, east, south, and that he would be a very powerful man. So that's the first Torah portion. The second Torah portion is called Vayetze. And in this Torah portion, Jacob is escaping Esau, obviously, after just doing this really horrible thing to him. And he lays down to sleep, and he has a dream that a ladder reached the sky, and there were angels going up and down on it. And when he woke up, he said, God was in this place, and I did not know it. And this was when God's blessing was actually given to Jacob. So he had a recognition that he had this special relationship. Also in this Torah portion, we learn that Jacob has a very, very long love story with Rachel, and he was very much in love with Rachel, and he worked for 7 years in order to marry her, and at the last minute, her father switched Rachel and Leah, so Jacob married Leah instead, and so he ended up working for 14 years in order to marry Rachel. The next Torah portion is called Vayishlach, which means, and he sent. Jacob sent messengers to find out what Esau was doing, because the last time that they were together, Esau was so mad at him. And so Jacob split up all of his people, all of his family members, and all of his sheep and his flocks in 2 different camps, and in order to save some of them, just in case Esau really had these 400 men running after him. And so eventually they all meet, and instead of fighting, the brothers decide to hug it out, and they reconcile with each other. The next Torah portion is called Vayeshev, and this is moving on to a new character. We're talking about Joseph, Jacob's youngest son. And Joseph was a very special guy. He had a lot of different dreams, and he decided that he had a dream once that said he would rule over all of his family, including all of his older brothers. The brothers didn't like this so much because Jacob also favored him the most, and the brothers decided to take him and sell him into slavery, but tell their father Jacob that he was killed. Obviously, not a very great story. And finally, the last Torah portion was talking about Joseph also, who ended up to be sold into slavery into the royal family of Egypt, and he worked in their house, and he was eventually put into jail because he got in a sticky situation with Potiphar's wife. Potiphar was the man he was working for, and so he turned out to be a very, very important person in Egypt because he also interpreted dreams, and he had a high status from Pharaoh for interpreting his dream that said that there would be a famine in the land, and eventually he would rule over Egypt. There's more to the story that happened when the brothers came back down to Egypt, but we'll talk about that next time. So the question at the end of this week's 5 minutes of Torah in 1 month, 1 month of Torah in 5 minutes, is that why do you think the younger brother in all of these situations won out over the older? So next month we'll have 5 more Torah portions that we'll talk about and another question to answer. So I hope you enjoy. It's been a lot of fun. See you all soon.